Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about why I think that bedwetting is a disability. Have you ever applied for a job online and you've gotten to the application part where it asks if you consider yourself disabled? Do you check off yes? And if so, do you check off yes because you have bedwetting, incontinence, or overactive bladder? And somewhere in that application it'll also ask you if this is a visible disability, because these sort of things matter when it comes to getting a job. For that section I usually answer yes because I have a bad back and I broke it twice, and so I have to be very careful. Well, I try to be very careful with what kind of activities I do when considering a job application. But that was 4 years ago. I've gotten better, I've healed, my back is okay and stable, so I kind of don't think about it as much as I used to. But it used to be a big thing on my mind back when it was really prevalent in my life. However, I'd like to know what you think on whether or not bedwetting or incontinence in general is a disability. The definition of disability on Google says a physical or mental condition that limits a person's movements, senses, or activities. The definition of disability on Merriam-Webster dictionary says a physical, mental, cognitive, or developmental condition that impairs, interferes with, or limits a person's ability to engage in certain tasks or actions, or participate in typical daily activities and interactions. It doesn't say anything about nighttime. And then it also expands on that and says impairment, such as a chronic medical condition or injury that prevents someone from engaging in gainful employment. The definition of primary nocturnal enuresis on Wikipedia is involuntary urination while asleep after the age of which bladder control occurs. Because a child is not disabled when they are wet in the bed and developing, but an adult is disabled when they're wet in the bed. It seems pretty straightforward, that definition for sure. The reason I say all this is because I don't think a lot of people consider bedwetting a disability. Whether or not it interferes with employment, whether or not incontinence or overactive bladder interferes with employment, it's still a disability in my opinion, because you have a disability in order to hold your bladder, a function that you need to have on everyday life and every night, that most people don't even think about. It doesn't even cross their mind that they had to use the washroom today. When I was looking up stuff about this video, I came across this website from an anonymous person who kind of just wrote a very short blog about their challenges of living with bedwetting. So this is an excerpt from the Simon Foundation for Continence, and the article is called Living with Primary Nocturnal Enuresis. This part I thought was interesting. He says, I can't join the armed forces or the police or firefighters. I can't work in mining camps or on oil rigs or ships or anywhere that you share a room or someone else cleans it, or you can't wash sheets every day without people knowing. I think that bedwetting should be classed as a disability. Not so that we as sufferers get looked down on or seen as lesser humans, because that already happens, but so that we can get help and support when we need it. Another side of the disability point is also that if someone bullies or discriminates against you because you wet the bed, you can do them for discrimination in the courts, which is, I mean, if it's really, really bad, then probably yes, you can still do that. But there's also something else he mentioned earlier in this article. As I was growing up, I got the usual, you'll grow out of it speeches and the alarm at night. I even got the stretch your bladder capacity routine from specialists. These specialists also like to quote statistics about how many people wet their beds, although they never quoted for numbers 18 years or above. I have never met anyone else in my life who has primary nocturnal enuresis. Although, if I can hide it, so can they. But there is no way to arrange a group or meeting. Alcoholics and drug users have support groups, why can't we? I think in regards to bedwetting being a disability that is an actual disability, I still believe it is, but I also think it's really frowned upon. For myself, I know, and many of you out there have government support for this disability because it has to be classified by a doctor and gone through to whatever disability programs you have in your country or state that will cover costs such as diapers, nappies, pads, whatever else, like machines and stuff that you costs whatever accrue while you have this disability, those are still classified under disability acts and such. However, it's not sort of like a disability you can sort of just bring up casually in conversation that people will, you know, not sort of cringe at, or at least take seriously. In Ontario, Canada, we have ODSP, which is Ontario Disability Support Program. The website has this information on it. The program's definition of a person with a disability is found in the ODSP Act. Meeting the definition means that you have a substantial mental or physical impairment that is continuous or recurrent and is expected to last 1 year or more, and your impairment directly results in a substantial restriction in your ability to work, care for yourself, or take part in community life, and your impairment, its duration, and restrictions have been verified and approved by a healthcare professional, which makes sense. In regards to Ontario Disability, I was one time partway through the process of applying for it because I was so strapped for money that I couldn't afford to go to my doctor's appointments in Toronto and go to get diapers at Shoppers Drug Mart and go do all these things. And I was so poor. I didn't know what to do. And I was so scared I wouldn't be able to afford gas to go see my doctor. So I applied for Ontario Disability, and I was almost there, except another life event happened where I was able to afford this and I was able to get some money, so that was nice. However, that sort of thing really scares me because it would have been a little bit longer before I was approved for this Ontario Disability thing. However, it would always just sort of made me feel a little bit nervous because, like, in Ontario, or at least there was a rule at the time when I was applying, that you would be supplemented some money. I wasn't expecting to live off of it. I just wanted to have some money supplemented to me to be able to afford these costs. However, when I was going through the application process for it, I was not treated poorly, but I felt the judgment and just the stereotypical, like, why, like, just the pure, like, skepticism in her eyes and her voice, and just like, okay, cool, like, this is what you're applying for, all right. Because I'm a young, healthy looking adult who doesn't appear to have a disability, but I do consider, actually right now I've run out of pads and I need to go to Shoppers Drug Mart tonight to go buy some because I don't have any for tomorrow. And that's gonna cost me like 15-20 bucks. And usually I actually get them from my friend's mother, who gets them for free because she's on Ontario Disability for other things, and one of the things is that she needs pads. So another thing I wanted to bring up is certain disabilities can cause bedwetting and overactive bladder. So you may be disabled and have that, but does having overactive bladder and bedwetting make you disabled? Does it go both ways? And I still say yes, because it still impairs your quality of life. Like this guy who said in this article, he wouldn't be able to work in certain scenarios where, well, let's say he was on an oil rig and he wanted to work there. You'd be away for months at a time. There is a way, I suppose, where you'd be able to bring all the supplies with you, but can you imagine taking like 3 to 6 months worth of diapers with you? That'd be like a huge amount of boxes. And also whatever other supplies, like pads and whatever else you need. If you needed to wear 2 to 3 a day, or if it's only at night, like, can you just imagine bringing that much supplies with you? Or being someone who works in the army or anywhere where you're living away from home. That just sounds excruciating. just thinking about it is so awful and stressful. And then I can't imagine who else you're living with in close quarters who also would have to know about this, because how else are you supposed to hide it? But I don't think we should have to hide it. That's living in a perfect world where we wouldn't have to hide it, but it just is, it's very frustrating. And I like, people commend me all the time on being able to talk about this, but I just want to be open to the point where it's not a big deal. and it isn't to me anymore, but it's taken a lot of practice and a lot of time to be able to talk about this with a straight face and respectfully and knowing what I want to say. And I just really wish that even going to a doctor's appointment, it wasn't awkward. And going to talk to healthcare professionals who would take it seriously. And knowing that this is a disability that you struggle with every single day and every single night, that should be enough fact, well, also doctor's note, but enough fact to know that yes, you need help with this, and there's no way that you could just go around living like everyone else when you would just be wetting yourself all the time. Like, that's not how you should be living. So being disabled in various situations can cause bedwetting, like I said. And so in those situations where it is a byproduct of something else, such as breaking your back or a car accident or a skiing accident or whatever other traumatic event that has happened to you where your bladder no longer functions the way it's supposed to, that is usually looked on in the healthcare professional's eyes as being okay and legitimate. But when you can't prove, other than the fact that you're constantly wetting yourself, well, I wouldn't say I'm constantly wetting myself, but when you can't prove it in other than just having to buy the supplies all the time, and like I say, every time I do my taxes, they always question me. They're like, are these for you? And all the diaper purchases and all whatever else I need to buy, and the gas trips and everything, the expenses. I'm like, yep, 100%. And then they're like, can you provide a doctor's note if you needed to? And I was like, yep. Also, just check out my YouTube channel. For instance, alone last year, I know this is getting a little personal, but last year I claimed $5,600 in expenses. And the year before that, it was like $5,400 in expenses, just for my bladder. And I get, like I said, I could probably go back to ODSP and go through the process, but I'm okay with claiming it on my taxes because then I'm not restricted by the program itself, Ontario Disability. I'm just making room in my now budget to be able to afford these items and stuff. But it's really expensive to have a disability. And I know this isn't a big disability, well, big in like real life eyes, like if you have like diabetes, any other real like chronic disability or disease, like these things are always going to be very expensive. So I think if you struggle with it and it costs you money and it causes you distress, then it should be classified as a disability. And then mental disability, like diseases and disabilities, I think are starting to come to like light now too. So I wouldn't be afraid to say that you have a disability, not that you should actually put it on your resume, or not resume, but like your application for a job. But in my opinion, when I do that, if I would still be doing that, just because having overactive bladder means that I can't drive trucks for very long distance or doing certain things. Like I'd have to be able to have access to a washroom, and that isn't a problem, but in certain situations, like I get to the point where I'm holding my bladder for too long that I just immediately start leaking, and it's really, really crappy. And these are things that I have to consider, and I think that is technically a disability. So if you agree with me or you don't, please comment down below. I'd love to hear what you think. And I've heard from so many of you saying that like bedwetting and overactive bladder has come from an accident or some other disability or disease. For those of you who've had this all your life and it's always just been a stigma in the back of your mind that you just have it and you should be over it by now because you're no longer a child, like those are the disabilities that, or those are the people I think that like really need to hear this kind of thing. But anyways, you know what I mean. Anyways, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you like this kind of video, and watch all of my other videos. And I will see you guys next week. Bye!